guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you guys are new here, my name is Lexie. Thank you for stumbling upon my channel and giving this video a listen. So this video is going to be a little different than my traditional vlog style video, but I think it's a really important video to put out. So for those of you that may not know, I am a part of a podcast called the Pro Physique Code, and we put out 2 episodes a week, but I'm specifically on every Monday episode we put out. And earlier this week, we put out an episode that was talking about coaching red flags, and I was really taken back in a good way by how many people reached out after we put it out and just thanked us for putting out that information. And you know, it's a topic that I don't want to sit here and I'm not making this video to stir up any controversy or to be negative or anything, but I'll be very honest, it really does pain me to see how many people are taken advantage of from a coaching standpoint, just by little red flags that they don't even know are red flags, right? And especially first-time competitors, I see this all the time. And in fact, I sometimes even get some of those clients that come from really bad past experiences and they were taken advantage of, but they listened to the coach because they didn't know any better. So I'm making this video not necessarily because I don't want to say not because I want to, because I do want to spread the word, but I don't want you guys to think that I'm making this video to stir up any controversy, to call anybody out, to be negative in any way. I'm specifically making this video because I just want to spread the word and hopefully, lessen the amount of people that are taken advantage of or that end up in really sucky coaching situations. So before I start out and I talk about some of my, coaching red flags, I do want to preface by saying if this video resonates with you, or, this may not even apply to you. Maybe, hopefully you have an awesome coach and none of this applies to you, but if you guys could do me a favor and share this video on your socials, that would be awesome. I really am just trying to spread this word because it's surprising how many people don't realize some of these things are true red flags. So without further ado, my number one first coaching red flag would be if a prospective coach does not offer a consultation call before signing up with them. So what I mean by that is if you are looking at a couple different coaches, or you're looking at hiring a coach and they are not offering to get on the phone with you, or maybe do a Zoom call, or just have that one-on-one interaction right off the get-go before you sign up, I would consider that a major red flag. Even if a coach just sends you a questionnaire, I would not consider that. That's not, that should not be in place of a phone call. In my personal opinion, I think a phone call is super important because coaches and clients, that's a relationship, right? And so I firmly believe that in order for a coaching and a client relationship to be successful, you guys need to mesh really well. Personalities need to mesh. And sometimes you find out if you hop on a call with a prospective coach, you may find out, they're a great coach, but I just don't mesh well with them, right? And so I think that the one-on-one, either call or Zoom call or FaceTime or whatever it is, when scouting out a prospective coach, I think that is so important. So if a coach does not offer that, I would take that as a red flag, because more oftentimes than not, that may mean they just don't want to, take the time to get to know you as a person. And that also may mean that you're going to be fed a copy and paste cookie cutter plan that they're giving every one of their other clients. So that is red flag number 1. So red flag number 2, so 2 and 3 kind of go together, and number 2 is going to be speaking in absolutes. And what I mean by this is coaches that speak in very absolute directs, meaning you can't do this or you can't do that, or they have a very specific set of yeses and nos, and I don't want that to be taken out of context, but I think that what I'm trying to get across is that, for example, I'll use an example. If a coach tells all of their clients no dairy, no fruit, those are examples of absolutes, right? And I think any good coach out there knows that you can't speak in absolutes, because maybe for one client they shouldn't have dairy and they can't have dairy, but that's not, just because that one client can't tolerate dairy does not mean the rest of the clients won't tolerate dairy. Or some coaches may say, I only do Stairmaster for cardio, and then they apply that to everybody, and I think that that is a major red flag, right? Because at the end of the day, as individuals, we are all unique. We are all going to require a slightly different approach. Now, that's not to say that, a coach can't have their kind of standard methods, but in my opinion, a good coach needs to realize that, you can't speak in absolutes and apply that to every one of your clients. And if you're doing that, not all of those clients are going to be successful, right? And that kind of feeds onto my coaching red flag number 3, and that is if a coach does not answer your questions. So as a client, I understand that there is a difference between asking a logical question just because you want to know the why behind it and questioning a coach's approach, right? There's a big difference there. But I always encourage my clients to ask questions because I think that psychologically, if you know the why behind what you're doing, you're a lot more likely to buy into it and to do it, right? So I would say a major red flag, and red flag number 3 is not being able to answer a question, or not being able to ask your coach a question and get an answer from them. So if you ask your coach a question such as, hey coach, I noticed you did this. Why are we doing this? Just because, you want to know, and just it's for your knowledge. If they refuse to answer that question, or if they give you some sort of answer such as don't ask questions, just do as I say, in my opinion, that is a huge red flag, because to me that points at one thing. That points at, okay, if they don't have an answer, if they don't want to answer that question, they probably don't have an answer. Therefore, there is probably no logical reason as to why you are doing that, right? If your coach says no fruit on the plan and you ask, hey, I'm just generally curious, like I want to understand and learn here, why am I not allowed to have fruit? And your coach just says, don't ask questions, that's a huge red flag, because right there, that means there's probably no rhyme or reason for what they're doing, and they don't have a general question. Again, any good coach should be able to answer your questions. And again, there's a big difference between just asking a question because you're curious and you want to learn more yourself as an athlete, and questioning a coach's approach, right? There's two different frames there, but I certainly don't believe that, I certainly believe that you should be able to ask your coach questions and for them to give you an answer. And guess what? If they don't have an answer, I think any good coach knows if they don't have an answer for something, they're going to admit it, and then they're going to refer you maybe to an outside source or somebody else that may have an answer, or they may say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question, but I will look into it and get back to you, right? So that is coaching red flag number 3. Alrighty, so coaching red flag number 4 is going to be your check-in response time. So I think that this is going to be a very variable kind of thing. So I'm not going to sit here and speak, directly and say, okay, well, if your coach doesn't respond in this amount of time, that's a huge red flag. But I think that generally, I would say that if you're checking in with your coach and you're checking in on time, I think that's key there. I know that as a coach, like if I get, a client check-in on the weekend, I may not get to it within that day because I have my certain day that I'm not checking my computer for check-ins. But I think that as a client, if you're sending your check-in to your coach on time within business hours, you should be getting a response at least within 24 hours. I mean, I would say I always try to get back to all my clients within the day. And that is, of course, if they're checking in on their check-in day on time. But I'm thinking, if you have to wait longer than 24 hours to hear back from your coach with regards to your check-in, that's probably a red flag. Because the way I look at it is, especially if you are a contest prep client, when you get down and dirty in prep, like you are down to the nitty gritty, you are a week or two out, your body can literally change on a daily basis. Therefore, if you are having to wait 2+ days to hear back from your coach, that's 2 days of potentially wasted time right there, right? And again, I say this one, the check-in response time with, again, to reiterate, if you're checking in on time and you're checking in on your check-in day, right? Because as a client, you also have to do your part. And if you're checking in with your coach on the weekends when they've made it obvious that they don't work on the weekends, well, then of course you're probably going to have a longer time that you have to wait before you hear back from your coach. But I do think a 24-hour maximum response time is pretty standard. And again, I would even beg to say, if you're checking in with your coach first thing in the morning and you don't hear back from them, by the end of the business day, I don't know, that's, at least I always try to get back to all my clients within the day. But I would say if you're having to wait consistently longer than 24 hours to hear back from your coach, I'd potentially say that is a red flag. So the next coaching red flag, number 5, I think, would be coaches who, we discussed this in the podcast on Monday that was released on the Pro Physique Code, and this is one of the big things Paul talked about, but specifically coaches that go around and, they jump into your DMs, or maybe they, they're walking around backstage and they're trying to kind of do what maybe I like to call it coaching, meaning, you know, they know that you're a really good athlete with great potential. They know you're working with a coach, but they're gonna slide into your DMs and try to get you to come over to them. Or, you know, they're gonna walk around backstage and try to talk to you and convince you that you should work with them, right? You know, and I don't think this, in my opinion, I feel like it's kind of shady to do, especially if you're a coach jumping into, you know, clients' DMs when you know they're already working with the coach, and then trying to, you know, elicit your unsolicited advice, or trying to, you know, tell them that they should work with you. In my opinion, I think that's a red flag, because at the end of the day, the way I look at it is, you know, that probably means that that coach isn't even, like, they're not paying attention and giving the time and energy to their current client roster, right? So that either means that they don't even have, you know, they don't have enough clients and they're fishing for clients because they need business, or it could mean that, like, you know what, they have a lot of clients, they're just not paying attention to their current clients, and they're just focused on like the next best thing and, you know, getting more and more clients, and maybe they just care about that number of clients rather than the quality of clients, right? So in my opinion, I would say that's a red flag, and I kind of call that poaching. You know, if somebody's walking around backstage or at a show and they know you're working with a coach, but they come up to you and they're trying to kind of convince you that, you know, their method is better than what your current coach is doing, or you should work with them. And same for DMs. I think DMs happen more frequently than we think, but, you know, coaches sliding into other clients' DMs, you know, and saying, oh, you know, you should come work with me, or, you know, I could turn you pro, or things like that, right? I think that is a major red flag. So that was, I think, coaching red flag number 5. Alrighty, so coaching red flag number 6, yes, number 6 is going to be a yes man. And let me explain what I mean by this one. So I think that naturally, like, let's be honest, everybody always wants to hear yes, right? If you have this big miraculous idea in your head of like, oh my gosh, I want to do this show, and then I want to go to nationals, I want to turn pro, you know, we want to always be told, oh my gosh, yes, that's definitely going to happen, let's do it. And in some cases, maybe that is realistic, but I think it's important to know that a good coach is going to tell you what you need to hear, which may not always be what you want to hear. So, you know, if you're talking with a coach and literally everything you're saying, you know, they're saying yes to everything, you know, they're never being realistic. I'm not saying that that's always a red flag, but I think you need to be leery and be cautious of a yes man, because some people out there will, especially when they're first talking with you as a client, they're going to tell you what you want to hear, so you sign up with them, right? And that is one thing, you know, I've learned throughout my years of coaching, because believe it or not, I've been doing this for over 3 years, is that, you know, I would much rather as a coach tell somebody what they need to hear, and maybe that's not what they want to hear in the moment, but I will always tell somebody what they need to hear if that means I have their long-term best interest in mind. So I think that is a potential coaching red flag, is if somebody, you know, I think that naturally if somebody's just telling you yes to every idea you have and, you know, never being realistic, I would say, you know, just be leery of a yes man. So that was coaching red flag number 6. So now number 7 is going to be, and this is specifically if you are hiring a coach for competing purposes, be leery of hiring somebody who hasn't evolved with the sport and with the time. And what I mean by that is, take a look at what was rewarded 10 years ago on a bodybuilding stage in any division. We'll just use bikini for example. Take a look at what was rewarded 10 years ago and compare that to what is being rewarded today. It is a completely different look, completely different physique, right? Even the suits, I mean, gosh, the suits 10 years ago were different than they are today. The standard is so different. So, you know, I think it's important to keep that in mind when hiring a coach. If, you know, if you sense that your coach doesn't, you know, try to stay on it with the times, and, you know, if your coach, let's say they competed 15 years ago and they're still kind of stuck in that like old school mindset of, okay, what I did 15 years ago is what I'm still doing today, I would say that's a red flag. And, you know, unfortunately I do see this a lot. You know, and I'm not saying that your coach has to be a coach that has competed recently by any means, but, you know, I think it's important that as coaches who are coaching competitors, that we stay relevant and we evolve with the sport, right? And if we are still doing the same thing we did 10 years ago and expecting it to work and yield the same results today, that's, you know, that's a potential, like, that's holding our clients back potentially, right? I even know in my 3+ years of coaching, like, my methods have changed and evolved over time. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this sport, is that, like, in order to stay relevant and to stay on top of things and to continue to improve, like, we have to do that, right? So I think it's important to make sure that, you know, your coach is evolving with the sport and they're not stuck in, you know, these old philosophies from 10, 15 years ago. All right, moving right along to coaching red flag. I think this is number 8. And this is going to be if your coach, when you're checking in with your coach, obviously with online coaching, all check-ins are done virtually, right? And so in my opinion, a red flag is if a coach is not asking for anything but your weight and your pictures every week for check-ins. I think that is a major red flag, because I think any good coach knows, coaching goes beyond just what a client's weight is and what their progress pictures look like, right? There are so many other little variables that go into why we make changes in a client's protocol as a coach. So obviously, yes, weight and pictures have a lot to do with that, but I also know that weekly, I love to know about, everything else that my client went through that week when it comes to sleep, stress, strength, energy, digestion, bowel movements, all these other little details. And in fact, if I have a client who just sends me their pictures and their weight, I will always respond and say, hey, I need a little bit more information before I can send you a check-in response back. Because, at the end of the day, there's so many little variables that us as coaches have to take into consideration before changing a client's protocol. And so if your coach is only asking for your weight and your progress pictures and that's it, I would say that's a huge red flag, because that's very little data that they're using to base their changes on, right? So moving right along to coaching red flag number 9, and that is, if you sense as a client that your coach just doesn't care for you as a person, I think that is a major red flag, right? Of course, as a coach, I want my clients to do well on stage, right? But I also care a lot more and care about my clients beyond just the stage, right? And what I mean by that is I'm going to push my clients to look their best on stage, but guess what? I also care a lot about them as a person, how they're doing mentally, how their mental space is pre and post prep. And I think it's really important when hiring a coach. I'm not saying your coach has to be your bestie and know all the ins and outs of your life. I mean, maybe they do, but I think it is important that you hire somebody who cares about you as a person, right? Because I've done it before where maybe I have this sense that maybe one of my clients is just, they're a little off mentally, right? So I may open up to them and say, hey, I sense that you're struggling a little bit right now. Let's hop on the phone, let's talk about things. And, and I think it's important for your coach to care about you beyond just the stage, right? Of course, a coach wants you to do well on stage. They want you to look good. They want you to bring your best. But if they're doing that, but they're also failing, and they're neglecting your headspace and your mental health and everything else that may be going on and impacting, your life, I think that is a red flag. And so, that kind of leads me to my last thing I want to wrap up this video saying, and it's that, if you're being coached by somebody and you just have this weird gut feeling that something is off, I think it's really important to trust that gut feeling, listen to that gut feeling, because chances are that gut feeling is happening for a reason. I think at the end of the day too, you have to realize you're paying for a service, right? You deserve to get what you're paying for. And if you're unsatisfied, I think what I always recommend doing first and foremost is having a talk with your coach, because if your coach is not doing something that you want them to be doing, it doesn't ever hurt to have that conversation and to tell them. I know if I have a client who comes to me and says, hey coach, could you do this instead of this? I'm going to be very open-minded and probably I'm going to do it if it goes along with my philosophy and my morals, right? So I think that if you're in a situation and maybe some of the boxes are being checked but some aren't, it never hurts to open up to your coach and just ask, hey, is this something you'd be interested in doing? I'd really appreciate this. And then, worst thing they say is no, and then okay, this is probably not going to be a good fit moving forward, So I'm going to wrap up this video here. I didn't want to make it too long, but I did want to cover all my bases and kind of all of the major red flags that came to my mind. So again, if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate you giving it a thumbs up, commenting, and like I said at the beginning of this video, if you guys could do me a favor and share this video, I would really appreciate it, because you would be so surprised by how many people don't realize some of these things are red flags. And I hate that so many people are taken advantage of and so many people have bad experiences with online coaches, because I also think it doesn't put a good taste in people's mouth when it comes to online coaching, right? If your first experience is really bad, well then you automatically are gonna probably have trust issues and assume like all online coaches are like that, right? So I would love to spread this video. I would say I would love for it to go viral, but I don't know if that's realistic, but please share this video. I hope that wherever you guys are at in the world that you have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you guys in the next video.